to me, like the best idea at the time when I started the master's was to also start a YouTube channel to try to explain what I was learning in English. And so it will force myself to learn more and to practice like speaking in English, even though I had nobody to talk with.
I would imagine you and I have watched more video or more of us talking than 99.9% of the population. And that probably pays dividends in how we communicate or your ability to pick up the English language very quickly.
Having in mind that I wanted to do a video about a paper made it so motivating and so easy to read and understand it and just like reread and make sure that I understand it and then record the video and publish.
After you left your PhD program, I would imagine you have a pretty large chunk of time that you didn't have before. How did you allocate that?
In fact, I'm still trying to figure this out. It was definitely a challenge to try to keep all the things I love doing, like sports and just spending time with my friends, family, and girlfriend, while also working and not feeling the same way I was feeling with my PhD, where I felt like I was not doing enough.
This episode of Ken's Nearest Neighbors is powered by Z by HP, HP's high compute workstation grade line of products and solutions. Today, I had the pleasure of interviewing Louis-Francois Bouchard. So Louis is the host of the What's AI YouTube channel, which is one of my favorite sources for understanding some of the technical specifics of a lot of the new AI advancements that are being made. He has awesome individual videos as well as a podcast that he hosts there, one that I was just on a couple weeks ago. Louis also just decided to transition from his PhD into more focus on content and the YouTube channel. And in the episode today, we're going to focus a little bit on why he made that decision, how he's adapting to the changing landscape of content as well as AI, and much, much more. I really enjoyed this conversation with Louis. I was unfortunately a little bit under the weather, so I apologize. It isn't my normal energy, but Louis carried the interview either way. I hope you enjoy.
All right, Louis, welcome to the Ken's Nearest Neighbors podcast. I obviously went on your show, What's AI? And now I'm super excited that you can come and sort of share your knowledge and experience with my audience here. Again, welcome and thank you for coming on.
Thanks to you. Super excited to be here as well.
Amazing. Well, so as you may or may not know, I always start off the show with the same question to get the audience familiar with anyone I bring on. And that is, how did you first get interested in data? Was there a pivotal moment where you decided this is super interesting for me to do, or was it more of a slow progression over time?
Yeah. On my end, it wasn't really about data. It was more about math and programming, I guess. I was in university during my last year of systems engineering, and I didn't really enjoy this. Well, I didn't enjoy this at all. It was just like, I did a lot of internships around managing manufacturers and just working with machines, basically. And that didn't interest me nearly as much. And what I knew that I enjoyed, I always knew that I enjoyed math and all things related to logic, so obviously programming, but I didn't enjoy working alone and trying to debug, even though when you find a bug, it's really satisfying, but trying to debug was annoying. And in my last year, I finally had my first course related to artificial intelligence. I discovered artificial intelligence through like a competition that we had in our course to classify emojis, something like really basic, but it still led me to think that I could be using math to do something that was actually doing something in the real world, which was extremely cool. And I don't know why. This was in 2018, and I've never heard of anything related to data or artificial intelligence before that, even though I was in an engineering degree. So I was pretty late in the field, but yeah, I discovered that in this first course, classifying emojis and doing the competition. I really loved it. I loved everything about learning the basics of the first models, the perceptron and everything like that. And then I just kept with it and wanted to learn more like every day.
Awesome. So how did that interest transform into a career? So if I remember correctly, you did your PhD, and your PhD was in artificial intelligence, or your PhD, like how did you decide on that? What was your process for approaching that?
Yeah, I during that last year of university, of undergrad university, I followed following this first course. I followed like two others or something, and then I started the masters. And I did my master's in computer vision with um, basically prototype networks and just trying to better leverage convolutional neural networks. So like networks related to images, always related to images. And it was more of a research master's, and it was super interesting to me. I was just on my own doing research, and it was during COVID. So I was literally on my own, like in my house. And I had no girlfriend, and it was COVID, so no friends really, other than like gaming sometimes. But I wasn't into gaming anymore. So I just had lots of free time. And during that master's, I just wanted to learn more. And I also didn't know lots of English back in the day. And because I speak French. And so I have no idea why, but to me, like the best idea at the time when I started the masters was to also start a YouTube channel to try to explain what I was learning in English. And so it will force myself to learn more and to practice like speaking in English, even though I had nobody to talk with in English. And so I did that during my masters, and I was like paid a little bit with grants for the masters. And then I don't remember exactly when, but during the masters, someone reached out because of YouTube, reached out on YouTube in a comment to say that he wanted to talk with me because he recognized my accent from Quebec, from Canada. And we talked, and he was actually the CEO of a startup in Montreal and wanted to build an AI team. And so he hired me to build a team, and I did that. And then we just did lots of like research and development stuff related to images. And then I left to do the PhD, which was in computer vision, but more specifically in image segmentation of brain and spinal cord MRIs. So like the PhD was officially in biomedical engineering. So it was kind of a blend between artificial intelligence and the medical field, like in the first year that I did and then left. But in my first year, I learned a lot about the medical field and multiple sclerosis more specifically. But really, my learning was much more focused on biomedical and the medical field in general than artificial intelligence.
That's awesome. So, I mean, there's a couple of things I want to pull out of that. So first, why you started YouTube to essentially practice what you're doing, but also practice English is fascinating to me. I don't know if it's that common, but that was one of the reasons I also started a YouTube channel or started doing podcasts or any of these things, is because it wasn't that I was working on my English, but I was working on how I communicated, how I could tell stories, how I would essentially use a lot of filler words and try to stop doing that by watching it and getting feedback. It's interesting to see how much you improve if you're legitimately watching and critiquing yourself pretty frequently.
Oh yeah.
I would imagine you and I have watched more video or more of us talking than 99.9% of the population. And that probably pays dividends in how we communicate or your ability to pick up the English language very quickly.
Yeah, recording is drastic. It's crazy. Like the first time I've recorded myself in French, but the first time we've recorded was, I think, in university as well. We had one small communication course to just do like oral presentations in front of people and record ourselves, and then look at the recordings with everyone commenting on how well we did. And so I was extremely bad. Like I've always been super shy, and speaking in front of people was hard. And also just, I guess, speaking in general, I don't know. In French, it's much easier for me than in English, but it was still hard to remember like what to say and to just be with ease in front of people. And yeah, it was quite painful to see myself do that. And then I just wanted to improve and be much better. And that's also why I also started a podcast just like you. But it's pretty recent. I started in May last year, but it was also for the same reason that when I wasn't recording, like it's easy to record a video because you edit everything. But when I was speaking in events with people or just like speaking in English, just because still in my day-to-day life, I speak in French, I live in French, everything is in French. So I cannot practice really. And I do have some friends that speak only English and that I chat with, but I don't really speak with them often. And so I still wanted to keep practicing, and just because it's fun also to talk about your own field, since all my friends are not in artificial intelligence or have the same interest as I do. And yeah, so I decided to create a podcast as well. Just to, it's always to I don't know if it's to practice, but to improve something about me, to that I create those projects. So yeah, it's been a while. It's been really fun and challenging, but definitely worth it to do all the YouTube podcasts and all those things on my own.
Yeah, it seems to help, on my end when I'm trying to learn as well as create something I'm excited about. So if the learning is built in, that means I see this sense of improvement.
Yeah.
I get to see these changes in myself, but I also get to either grow a brand, I either get to increase my income, I get to do all these other things. And I think that that's a pretty, at least for me, a pretty important element of attention or motivation for me, is that if I feel like I'm not improving or I'm not learning as much, it's not as interesting for me. And that's something that's been big in the last couple of years, is that, for example, YouTube, I just didn't feel like I was learning as much. And then how do I change and pivot so that it's still interesting,
Yeah.
or there's a new challenge associated with that? That to me is how you create that. There's some artistry in that as well.
Yeah, I feel like that's quite common in the YouTube space to kind of master YouTube and then transition into podcasting. Just I feel like everyone is doing that right now. And on my end, I just wanted to mention that because I started by covering research papers, and I don't know if I assume you've read a lot of them, but I don't know if you enjoy reading them or if it was hard to motivate yourself to start reading them. But on my end, it was a bit hard just because it's quite tedious, and I don't know, I'm more of a listening and watching person. Like I like YouTube audiobooks, and I like to listen and more than to read, even though now I'm reading more and more, and I really love that. But back in the days, I just wanted to listen to things, and so reading papers was extremely difficult. But having in mind that I wanted to do a video about a paper made it so motivating and so easy to read and understand it, and just like reread and make sure that I understand it, and then record the video and publish. And just also the arbitrary deadline that I self-imposed, because, for example, OpenAI released a paper on DALL-E 2, and I want to be like the first to make a video or something. And so I just straight jump on the paper and work until it's like 3 a.m. to publish the video and to get it out there as soon as possible. So it's really cool to, I don't know, it's quite unique that, like, since I think on YouTube, lots of things are kind of news related. So you want to publish it like not before the others, but as soon as possible. But you don't have any deadlines. You don't, like, it doesn't have to be on the 1st of July. Like you just you just want to publish it faster. And if you yourself want to publish it faster, you will want to do it faster, more efficiently. You will just be super motivated. You will learn. It's just like the perfect motivation to do anything. So it has been really helpful to do YouTube videos. But just as you said, I've kind of grown out of it, especially out of the research papers that are now all the same pretty much. And the progress also comes from the industry rather than the academia. So there are not many research papers anymore, or even not many details on how, for example, ChatGPT works or whatever the new models. So I cannot really explain them if the details aren't even shared. So that's a bit annoying. And the podcast is like the lifesaver here.
This episode of Kansas Nearest Neighbors is brought to you by Z by HP, HP's high compute, workstation-grade line of products and solutions. Z is specifically made for high-performance data science solutions, and I personally use the ZBook Studio and the Z8 workstation. I really love that the Z workstations can come standard with Linux or WSL2, and they can be configured with the Data Science Software Stack Manager. With the Software Stack Manager, you can get right to the work of doing data science on day one without the overhead of having to completely reconfigure your new machine. Now back to our show.
Yeah, well, it's interesting how you describe that, where how industry is changes how you make content or any of these types of things. But the lessons that you learn from realizing that you can self-impose structure on something, or you can create your own deadlines or any of those types of things, you probably were decent at that being in your master's study as well as when you were doing your PhD. But at least for me, I realized that I could create a ton of projects over the course of, I could make a video a week. Or early in my YouTube career, I was making, I think, 3 videos a week, right?
Wow.
And now I have that knowledge that I could do that. I can structure my time well enough. I can effectively produce those types of things. You also have the social proof of, well, not necessarily social proof, you have the social threat of producing something bad. And so you're more willing to put in the extra time and cross your T's and dot your I's. And I think that knowledge that other people are going to see some of the things you produce really increases the level. And it's cool to be able to push yourself forward and to create that almost feedback loop to produce things regularly. But as anyone can imagine, that's also kind of a grind when you want to get on something quickly and it's really exciting. But then after you do it a bunch, it does start to get pretty tiring, especially if it's the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I started in COVID, so it was, as I said, like I had lots of free time. It was easy to put out 80 hours a week or whatever. And I think at first I also did something like 2, 3, even 4 videos per week sometimes. But it was like I was grinding and doing only that, and I really loved that. Well, not only that, I was exercising, but only doing like sports and YouTube and the masters. So yeah, that's quite a lot. But I wasn't doing anything, like I wasn't seeing my friends because of COVID. I didn't have a girlfriend, which I have now, and it's definitely harder to balance everything now that like life is kind of back to normal. And yeah, it's like, fortunately I'm good with that. Like I enjoy doing just one podcast per week or one video per week or whatever, and it's nice. But I don't know if I could grind as I used to, and I also don't know if that's healthy or not, like to grind the way that you and I did. I guess I don't know if you would you say that you are still working as much as you used to, or is that slowing down? Or
not on YouTube. I mean, we've talked offline. I have another project going on and I'm spending a ton of time in that. I honestly sort of miss where life was very simple and I could just focus on 1 or 2 things and really completely immerse in them. I think that for me, the deadlines are what make it challenging, where it's a grind if you do it every week. And I'm trying to make the deadlines longer where I have to do more work, but it's over the course of a month. And to me, that feels fairly refreshing. And each monthly project is new. I think finding a balance in that is really important. So, if you do a video every week or you do a project or something new every week, that's 52 new things over the course of a year. If you do them every other week, you're half of that. If you do it once a month, it's 12 new things over the course of the year. I'm finding my attention span and my will to work works better with the 12 new things, but really diving in and doing deep research than having 52 things that I feel like I have to be rushing to get in.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's part of systems. And in some of the new stuff I'm working on, I can do a ton of research, and that'll take a couple weeks. And then, you know, I could make a couple episodes or record things if I want to, and that only takes a day or two. So for me, figuring out how to allocate that time effectively for me to stay motivated, but also to change, rather than doing one thing for a whole year, having 12 or 13 or 15, something like that, that is a better balance for me. But it's still hard to figure out exactly what that right balance is. And, you know, it's taken me 5 years to figure out what I think works for me. And we still don't know for a fact that that's the correct cadence. So I'm trying to continue to figure out that and iterate on that. And, you know, if I can get to some place where I'm pretty confident and comfortable with the amount of work that I'm doing, and I feel immersed in it, and I feel like it's really all that I need to be doing aside from hanging out with my family and my girlfriend and those types of things, and my fitness, that would be really an ideal state. But humans were also almost never satisfied with anything. So we'll find out, and I'll continue to learn about myself in that front.
Yeah, I think that's an ongoing, I don't know if that's a problem, but I also always want to do more. But I think I'm good at being satisfied with what I did and what I do. But I still always have in mind that, like, for example, I don't know if I'm going out for 2 days with my girlfriend, and it's super nice. I really love it. But I always have the little thing in my head that, like, oh, I could have worked or something. But it's still, I don't know if that's like, that hurts my mind or not. But it's definitely hard to deal with having to manage your own schedule. Like, I don't have to, I guess I've never really done that, but so I cannot say, but well, I've done internships, but I guess that it's easier to manage to have like a 9 to 5 regular job, Monday to Friday. And then you know that on the weekends, if you are out and you are not missing out. Whereas on our end, if we control our schedule, and basically the more we do, the more we gain, you always are missing out if you are doing something else. But you have to do other things. Like, you have to to remain sane and to enjoy life. But yeah, it's really a hard balance. On my end, the PhD was too stressful, but I think it was like a self-imposed stress, just because of like my colleagues and other people in the PhD that seems to publish a lot and stuff like that. So I just wanted to perform well, but I also wanted to keep releasing podcasts and YouTube videos and do my own things. And that just didn't blend well all together. It was just like impossible to be satisfied with the PhD, satisfied with YouTube, and also like have a healthy relationship with my close friends and family. And so I ended up quitting. But what I wanted to say, I talked about the PhD because I think, I don't know why, but it was super hard for me to motivate myself to work on the PhD related stuff. Whereas it's extremely easy for me to work on YouTube. I don't know if that's because I enjoy it more, or if it's because what you mentioned with the frequency and the deadlines, like the weekly deadlines. I don't know if on your end, since you are experimenting with that, do you see any motivation challenges, like differences in having to share weekly or versus monthly? Like, is the longer, the farther deadlines, are the farther deadlines like hurting your motivation or just willingness to work, or is it the same for you?
Honestly, I find the longer deadlines are, for me, a little bit better. But it's a precise balance. Like, if I did one thing a year, I would burn out. I wouldn't get it done because there's one thing and I'd be stressed about it, right?
Yeah.
Because if the one thing I did that year wasn't good, I would feel like I would have wasted the whole year. On the other hand, if there's 52 things over the course of a year for me, I start to feel like, oh, none of these really matter. I'm doing one every week. It doesn't have
Right.
to be as good as it could possibly be. And again, I find the balance of around 12 things a year. And I'm still figuring this out. I find 12 things a year is probably going to be optimal for me because I get to work really hard on something. I don't have to feel rushed about that. But at the same time, I got to switch and start over again with something else at a reasonable cadence. And there's also different phases to the process that I'm working on. So for me on this new project, basically I spend 2 weeks researching. I spend a week consolidating the notes, and then I spend a week recording or making content around it. So even within those 12 things I do a year, there's 3 different phases that stimulate different areas of my brain or my interest or my motivation. So there's still enough variance that it's interesting, but it's not necessarily as I just like am able to do all of those different things that scratch different itches of mine. Because if I was just reading all the time, I would get bored. If I was just consolidating stuff all the time, I'd get bored. If I was just recording all the time, I'd get bored. And the loops for that are better for me. For example, if I make a normal YouTube video, I usually spend an hour or 2 researching, depending on what the topic is. If I have to really go in depth or if I have to code something, it's a little different. But then I would spend maybe another couple hours creating a script, and then I would record for about an hour. Those loops to me they don't give me the feeling that I'm spending enough time on each part of the process, because who's to say on any topic a couple hours is enough? And some of the stuff I'm doing now, I'm reading 3-4 books and I'm learning all these different angles. Like that to me is real learning. That's in depth. That's where I can make a difference. Whereas in a lot of the stuff I've been doing now or more recent or before this has been essentially, anyone can do 2 hours of research on a topic, right? That's not a differentiator for me. So if I feel like the content, the things that I'm producing are dramatically better because other people are not willing to put in as much work as I can do to produce what I believe is really high quality content, that gives me more motivation because, I'm going into uncharted territory that other people haven't been. So, going back to what you were saying about what motivates you, I wouldn't even say that the structure definitely helps in the cadence of how often I produce things, but the feeling that I have control over that whole process is what's the most motivating for me. I don't know if you necessarily didn't feel that in your PhD. It seems like you had a decent amount of autonomy, but the fact that I get to own the entire process, I can choose the cadence, I can choose any of these things. That is what really excites me to produce anything out there.
Yeah, I think the main problem with the PhD, I'm just trying to reflect back, but I think the deadline was definitely a problem just because we basically aimed for like one conference like later in the same year, and so I didn't really know how much I should progress. I just knew that I should work as much as possible, but no clear goals, no clear anything. So it was a bit hard to measure like how much I should be doing versus how much I did and etc. But the other main issue I think was that my beliefs have changed. Like during my master's, I really loved research. I still love research, but I thought it was the way to make AI progress and to improve how the algorithms work and to make all this field better. But obviously now it's the other way around. Like the industry is driving the show with artificial intelligence, and all the progress is made at OpenAI, DeepMind, and all companies. It's not made at universities really. Well, if it's made at universities, it's because like they are working with Facebook, Meta, or like other they are involved with the industry. They are not on their own, and so it didn't really make sense to keep. I think I just did 1 year, a bit more than 1 year, and so I still had something like 3+ years to do for doing research that I think would have been replaced within a few weeks or months and not making like real impact, I feel like, compared to working at a startup or building my own startup or doing things in the industry. So it was hard to, I guess it's hard to motivate yourself if you are not aligned with the goal. Either it's a company goal or your I don't know, PhD research goal. So
Yeah,
yeah, that
I
might have been the issue.
that makes a ton of sense to me. I mean, honestly, anyone can see that I've been making probably less data science content than I've ever made before over the last 3-4 years. And a lot of it feels like the things that I would make are pretty replaceable on the market. I would have to spend a huge amount of time investing in doing really unique projects and really unique things when that just isn't the most exciting thing for me right now. Right. The things that I wanted to make content about or make content about in the past, they're not necessarily relevant to the way that the field has changed. And I don't think people realize how much our domain has changed in such a short period of time. And if either you don't feel like, or in my case, I didn't feel like I could keep up, or if you feel like what you had set out to do is not going to have an impact or not going to have as much influence on the field as you once thought, it makes a lot of sense to pivot into what you believe will have an impact on the field. You know, you're a lot closer to the cutting edge than I am with a lot of the stuff. I mean, I think from your background in research, knowing what's going on in the field, and the way that you create content around it, to me, that's a way that you can make a difference. You can inform people, you can help them understand decisions that are being made, you can help them understand what's going on. And that to me is a really powerful thing. So after you left your PhD program, I would imagine you have a pretty large chunk of time that you didn't have before. How did you allocate that?
In fact, I'm still trying to figure this out. I think I was very close to a burnout when I quit the PhD. So I took some time to recover. Right after the PhD, I actually had lots of real deadlines to make happen, both for a free course that we were working on, but in collaboration with other companies. So they wanted to respect some kind of deadline. And so we had lots of content to write and videos to do. And I also accepted, this is my fault, but I accepted a few sponsorship deals that were ending, like to be published around the same days, all right after I quit the PhD. So I had like a lot of work to do. And it was just like all YouTube and basically like AI education content, and a big 2-week rush right after I quit the PhD. And then I had just done too much, and I don't know. I don't know what a burnout really is, but I couldn't really. I was definitely doubting myself about, like, is it still worth to do videos or to do podcasts or to record something? Just because I told you, but I'm quite shy. Even in one-on-one conversations, it's a bit hard for me to, like, I'm stressed before the conversations, and then when I talk with you, it's pretty nice and it's completely fine. But I'm always stressing right before, like socially anxious or something. I don't know the details, but the social things are a bit hard before they happen. And I couldn't get myself to go over this, especially because towards the end of the PhD, I focused on the PhD. So I didn't record anything really. And then I did this rush for YouTube. So I didn't do podcasts for a while. And getting on to record with someone was just very hard because I didn't have the practice, and doing it and repeating it, it makes it much easier for the future one. But if you stop, it just like goes downhill and comes back to zero pretty much. But yeah, so I didn't manage my time well at all. I just stopped the PhD and focused like on YouTube and the course that we were working on, all in for way too much time, for 2 weeks. And then I think I couldn't make myself do anything other than sports. Like I was just running a lot. I was going to the gym and just training and watching videos. It was really not a good learning time. But like I don't know. I just couldn't do anything. It was the first time in my life I think I was like this, like pretty. I just have the French word, but I guess burnt out. And it took me, I think, maybe another 2 weeks to finally get back to normal where I could do stuff. And I started back the podcast and some YouTube videos, as well as working on new courses, free courses with Towards AI. And still doing, I think, too much sports. So I don't know. I think I was taking at least like 4 hours of my day to run and to train, just because I was training for long term, for not a marathon, but like long distance running. So it takes time. And I just really enjoyed that. And so it was hard to, of course, do like 3-4 hours of sport per day and work a lot and try to see my girlfriend and friends, etc. And so it was definitely a challenge to try to keep all the things I love doing, like sports and just spending time with my friends, family, and girlfriend, while also working and not feeling the same way I was feeling with my PhD, where I felt like I was not doing enough. And I think this was in early November last year, so like a month ago, 2 months ago. And then I think I found my way by, I don't know exactly, just I think time made its thing. I guess I think a big thing for me is that when I did my 2-week rush and burnt out, then I just started to decompress and listen to like useless YouTube videos and podcasts just for fun, like nothing that teaches you something, just like the things that are either gym related or just entertainment, like just fun. And I don't know why, but I think it does something to my brain where it doesn't make me want to work or do something. It just like makes me want to binge watch and wait. And so when running, instead of listening to music and dumb podcasts, I got back to my old habit of listening to audiobooks and like nonfiction audiobooks to teach me something and to learn, or like Huberman podcasts or things that really puts me into the mindset of wanting to do more and learn more. And I think that actually helps me a lot. Like now I'm listening to audiobooks and reading a lot more. And I think it really helps. Like, I think consuming, I don't want to say bad content, but consuming content that doesn't really teach you something, personally, it hurts me to do things. Like it just puts me in the same mindset of the people doing the content. So like I just want to be entertained and wait. And so I think that was the loop that I was in, the cycle of just consuming funny content. And then it was just too easy and nice. So I just kept on wanting to watch more and to do less. And then I finally got out of this loop to just to train and listen to things that make me learn. And it just motivated myself to myself do something and then do videos. And it just got back to the usual finally. And now I think the way to manage my time is I want to wake up as early as possible and work until I just like, I really love to run and to train. So it's hard for me to not do that. And so when I wake up, I try to work as much as I can until I have my kind of like daily burnout where I need to get out and get a run in or something. and then I go train or run, one of the two, and I come back, keep on working, and then I go for the other, either run or train, and then I can come back and work or see my girlfriend at night or something. And I think that this balance of not forcing myself to work all the time is actually what helps, like both this having a nice balance and also kind of pushing the entertainment content aside is what works for me. But I guess it's different to anyone, but I think that's how I got back to managing my work even without deadlines or schedules. But I'm still trying to figure this out. And even I told you right before that, but right now I'm a bit lost and I don't even know what kind of content to do, but I want to experiment. And I do have the motivation. I just don't know what's useful, especially in the AI space. That, like you just said it changed a lot in the past year, I guess, like since ChatGPT, or 2 years, year and 2 months. And yeah, it changed a lot, but also the content space around AI changed a lot. Like before we were, I don't know, a few dozen or whatever, but not a lot of people. Now there are like hundreds, if not thousands of channels that just shares news and everything AI related. So it's really hard to find your place and to be useful and meaningful. But I think the podcast is something great just because no one can replicate your voice and you. So I guess that's, if you are interesting enough, that's a good way to market yourself and to have content.
Yeah. Well, something something that you mentioned in there was, I thought was interesting about how you sort of got out of the funk is, one, the content you listen to, but sometimes realistically it does just take time.
Yeah.
This is something I've learned this year, is that being patient and just realizing that things take time for us naturally to get out of mindsets, naturally pick up things. I mean, when I'm playing golf or when I'm, training jiu-jitsu or any of the sports that I do, it's very interesting how one day you just can't get something, you can't get a feeling, you can't get a move, and then you sleep on it and your brain just does some magical stuff, and then the next day it all makes sense and it's easy. And I think that a lot of the time we don't realize how powerful that is with cognitively intense things as well, not just sports, is that if we're giving it time and we're not using, and we're doing what I call high quality leisure, which is not listening to comedy podcasts or going down YouTube rabbit holes and things like that, I find that my brain has an unbelievable ability to connect dots and to just sort of come up with answers when I've given it fuel to be able to do so. So exercise, I think, is awesome, to be able to just start piecing things together. Just reading and listening to content and news that is value add, is nonfiction that's helping you learn. Your brain starts to connect the dots across a lot of things. And I read this book a while ago called Range by David Epstein.
Yeah.
And something that I thought was interesting is the diversity of activities. You start to see analogous things. You start to see things that work in one industry that are not done in your industry. And you realize that you can make those connections. You can create those things. And I think content's very much the same way, is that if you continue to just do the right things and have faith that you'll just figure it out, it usually happens in that way. I know that sounds sort of wishy-washy and fuzzy, but if you're meditating, if you're running, if you're reading or listening to podcasts that make you think constantly, that's a pretty good thing. And also, how often do we just sit and think nowadays? I sit and think, just nothing around, have my notepad there for probably an hour a day. I think that I'm probably in the vast minority of doing that, but I have my best ideas during that time. I don't force it. I just write down what I'm thinking. I just sort of sit there and look at a blank page, and that's therapeutic, meditative, whatever it is. But stuff just starts coming out of the pen at a certain point, and you realize, oh, I didn't know I even thought this. I didn't even know this was a good idea. How did I come up with that? It must be in there some way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm the same way. I in terms of also creating that habit loop, I love listening to the Founders podcast. I plug them all the time. I think David Senra does an awesome job. But you get to see people who have thought about, essentially the idea is that he reads biographies on all these founders and entrepreneurs and talks about what they did differently. But you get constant inspiration by seeing how different people innovated in their field. What are the themes among that? And whenever I'm thinking and hearing new things, you start making relationships to what you're doing all the time. And it's like, oh, what is the right kindling to create the fire of innovation? For me, that is one that works really well. For other people, it might be something fundamentally different. But figuring out what works for you to be able to get your gears turning and things along those lines, I think is one of the most powerful things we can do. We can do in order to get out of a rut or to start making the changes that we want. And as I said, being patient. All of these things take time. It's never that it happens.
Yeah.
Aside from my training, it doesn't usually happen just overnight where things click.
Yeah. I also I don't know I don't know the exact theory behind that, but I've read and heard about the saying that like you are your 5 closest friends or something like that. Like you are the 5 closest person that you talk to. And I feel like in this age, you are basically the 5 people that you listen to just because we listen to a lot more content that we actually do in our daily lives interacting with people. Like you basically listen to this podcast a lot more than you talk to one of your friends, just because like it's more convenient and you do it while running or whatever. And I think that was, of course, with time, as you said, time, you obviously need to let it go and to understand that things will improve and get better on their own. But I do think that like if I listen to constructive and intelligent content, it definitely makes you more intelligent and construct and just like more productive, rather than listening to the comedy people that maybe makes you more fun to hang with. But definitely I think it does change your brain in the way you think, and you can motivate yourself just based on this like 5 people theory that you are the people you listen to. I think that's very important, and maybe that's one way to change, is to start by changing what you listen to and the people you interact with. And yeah, in 2024, it's not the people you interact with, but rather the people that you listen to or you read about.
Yeah. I mean, I do think that there is a time and a place for a comedy podcast or sort of mindless videos, but being intentional about those and having bounds for them is pretty important as well. If all your downtime is spent looking at that type of content, it's probably not going to be a good feedback loop for you. But if there's some portion that you're viewing it for a certain way, I mean, I think the entertainment content, I think a lot of those things that are a little bit sensationalized, they're very good storytelling, and there are things that I can learn from them. But if I'm looking at it as I want to learn from this and I'm viewing it because it's interesting and I want to use some of the things from that, the comedians, all these types of people, they're very quick on their feet. They're very good conversationalists. They have a lot of skills in that area.
Yeah.
If I'm viewing it, for a little bit of entertainment, but also because it's interesting to me how they communicate well, or some of the podcasts, I also look at what not to do. For example, there's a couple of podcasts, particularly comedy podcasts, that have 3 or 4 people and a guest. Yeah. And I can never understand what's going on. It's too much audio clutter. There's too many people talking at the same time. They're laughing all the time. And to me, that's not sustainable content, in the sense that I wouldn't want to make content like that because I get confused when I listen to it. Maybe if you're watching the video, it's a little different, but at the same time, what can I learn from those types of things? To me, that lets me, one, still watch some of that stuff a little bit, but two, I don't feel as guilty about it. And I know that it's bound in a certain thing. You know, it's the same idea with nutrition or having a cheat day or anything along those lines, is that if I know when I'm going to, if I have clear bounds about when I'm going to eat things that probably aren't good for me, then that helps me to stick to it, or that helps me to create structure around everything. I've been finding more and more that the structure we create in our lives, it actually breeds creativity and not the other way around, right? So if I don't have to think about a lot of the stuff that I do because I have structure around those things in my life, when I take action on something, I can be more creative in that thing because I'm fully committing myself to it.
Yeah.
And maybe that's getting a little far away from the idea of good content and bad content in, but there's I think you're right on that. There is a lot to that, a lot to the things that we essentially put into our brain and tell ourselves. Even the way we talk to ourselves is an interesting thing. I mean, the way I talk about myself, I probably hear myself talk about myself more than anyone else talks about me. And I bet I believe the things that I say that come out of my mouth. If I say I'm bad at something or say I'm good at something, who else is better to listen to than yourself about those things?
Yeah. I did. I went to a spa yesterday, and I did like the cold bath, and there were 3 different ones. Like one at, I don't have the conversion, but at 7 degrees Celsius, one at 9, and another one in the lake. And it's right now it's winter, and I believe it was -6 degrees, and there were ice on the lake, and nobody went there just because it's way too cold. But I did want to go there and just break the ice. That's a nice pun. But yeah, I did want to go there and to be the only one to break the ice, or the first one at least. And so I did it, and like I stayed for a minute or something, and it was extremely cold, like way too cold. But it's so satisfying afterward. And I just had the mindset of I really want to do it. Like I need to be the first in this random spa place to break this ice. I don't know, it's just like a dumb goal, but I had a goal, and I wanted to do it, and I just had the mindset like I cannot fail. Like I need to go break this ice, just because you had to go down in the water, and the ice was a bit farther away. And so you definitely had to go at least for a minute, like 30-second walk to go, or swim to go break this ice and then come back. And so, yeah, I still did it. And it was, I don't know, definitely not 0 degrees because I could swim in it, but like it was near 0, extremely cold. And I managed to do it. And then we did the circle of like sauna and other things. And we did this like 3 times. And the last time I wanted to go into the warmer ice bath that was 9 degrees Celsius, and I just couldn't do it. Like my mindset was just, okay, I can't, and I just kept on repeating this and out loud. And my girlfriend just tried to encourage me and to push me to doing it, and then I started to go down, and I couldn't get out of this loop of I will die if I do it. I cannot do it. And it was like a lot warmer than what I just did previously, but I ended up not doing, which was really disappointing. But still, it definitely shows how how important is the mindset to do anything in life. And yeah, I think it's really important to cultivate that, to start by listening to the right people and the people that will help you, but also talk about yourself in your head in a positive way, and just like try. I think it's necessary that you will sometime get in a loop like I did of I cannot do it, it's impossible. But then I think one of the books I've read about meditation, I think a good way to get out of this loop is to actually think about, like, for example, this was a cold bath, but think about like what is the worst that can happen in the cold bath, and really think about it and not try to divert away and think about other things, and like just not dodge the problem, but really think about what could happen, what is the benefit, especially, and try to focus on the positive things rather than the negative things. And the like, it will be cold, obviously, but you will feel better after. And it's just 1 minute. You can do it. You've done it. You've done worse. And yeah, I think it's really important for motivation and for working, especially in our jobs of where we manage our schedule. And for example, the 9 to 5 people want to go out the weekdays and the weekends, but we sometimes have to work and etc. So it may be hard to work sometimes where other people are out or want to go out. But yeah, in order to do that, I think it's super important to first work on your like mental health. And I think, as you mentioned, it's super important to talk to yourself in a good way, and also not think too much about when you get in a negative loop, like not I don't have the right word, but like it's okay to get in a negative loop. You don't have to pressure yourself to not be negative and then have remorse that you were negative or whatever. Like it will happen, and you just need to focus on the positive things and maybe let time help. But yeah, I don't know where I was going with this, but mental health is the number one thing for motivation and for everything. So that's really
Yeah,
important.
well, someone said, I can't remember who, but essentially, if you believe you can or you can't, you're right. So if you believe you can do something,
Yeah.
you'll be right that you can do it. If you don't believe in your ability to do something, you'll be right that you can't do it. And so, to me, that's something that it ties everything together
Yeah.
pretty nicely with what you're describing there. Louis, those are all the questions I have. Do you have any final words, any additional thoughts on how people can reach out to you, learn more about your show, anything along those lines?
Sure. I guess I cover lots of things AI related. So if you are interested in learning more about artificial intelligence, it's just What's AI or my name, Louis-Francois Bouchard, everywhere. And yeah, I don't have anything precise to add. I'm just excited to see the content that you've described that you will be publishing like in a longer time frame, and so lot more work and research. So I'm excited to see that. And yeah, thank you for receiving me. It was really nice. Always nice to talk with you. I really loved it.
Yeah. Thank you so much again for coming on the show. I'll link all of your details, your YouTube channel and LinkedIn, all that stuff in the show notes, as well as the description on the YouTube video. Louis, again, this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on, and can't wait to publish this one and share it with the world.
Likewise. Thank you.